Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, your moderator, and today's topic is artificial intelligence.
Oh,
So let me bring this up. We're looking at artificial intelligence. Um, how does that apply to truth in advertising? Is it a cute name? Let me go back to this. So, is it a cute name, but a disclaimer? Is the artificial intelligence smartly programmed but not genuinely involved? And what are some guidelines for authenticity? And of course, I'm just using this as a springboard to look at our own individual lives. In the paper, the Mallard Fillmore column, there was a cartoon, and he is talking to his, whatever the intelligent thing was, he was asking them a question and says, "Hey, sir, how many quarts are there in a gallon?" And the artificial intelligence comes back and says, "Okay, I found this on the web for, quote, how many awards have they given Tim Allen?" How many quarts are in a gallon? How many awards have they given Tim Allen? So I guess, is that to keep us on our toes, or is it to find? So anyway, I thought I would just go a little bit. Artificial intelligence listening ability, what makes it maybe not always be as accurate as it could be, and that is the listening ability and the response, not quality. As in, how many quarts are in a gallon can be mistaken because the listening ability and or the response that we give is not always quality. So looking at how quickly we adapt to all of these new things. And a little information does a body good. But there, if you're looking at a PowerPoint, underneath that, after that statement, I have a period, an exclamation point, and a question mark. Because I'm wondering if in our quickly adapting to everything, do we see it as a statement? Do we see it as a declaration that must be followed? Do we see it as a question as to trying to decide and look at what the answer or the solution may be? So our imagination, as we begin to look at those and see them as a statement or a declarative or a question, we can begin to set our imagination free. But again, sometimes that imagination gets out of proportion. We can just blow it up, or we can tone it down, or we can turn it sideways in all different ways and begin to see different perceptions. I know one of the places where I worked one time, there was 4 of us that was in a leadership position. And when we would have our weekly conferences, we had a tendency to really feed on each other. And more, I mean, we could take one suggestion and really blow it way out of proportion. So there always needs to be more looking at. So kind of defining some words. What is artificial? What does it mean? Well, according to the thesaurus, it says that artificial is to be false, to be fake, to be non-natural, an imitation, and insincere. Well, what about intelligence? What is intelligence? I didn't look this up. I just brought this out of my wisdom heart. I see intelligence as involving a deep internal knowing, an intuitiveness, and a creativeness that can help it to be a statement or an exclamation point or a question, so that we can learn more things. But warning, warning, warning. All of us have a creative system, but our creative system has no filters. And it can take it sky high, or it can take it way, way down to a depth. It can be very positive. It can be very negative. I think back to my years of working with prisoners and how prisoners can make destructive arsenal out of nothing. And they can make dice to gamble out of practically nothing, out of toilet paper, that looking at it, it really resembles fine quality dice. It's just amazing what our creative system can do, either to the creativity positive or the creativity negative. And so I'm thinking back of using my phone and sending a text, and I wanted to ask my cousin about Miriam's health, but my phone kept auto-correcting to Mario instead of Miriam. So I deliberately misspelled Miriam. Kind of a, don't tell me what I'm thinking, what I'm knowing, what am I intending to say. Don't insult my intelligence. So in the process of that, I chose to deliberately misspell the text, knowing that her innate intelligence would understand that I was talking about our cousin Miriam and I wanted a health update. So as we become knowledgeable of how much our cells know, of how much we know internally, as how much has been stored and is yet coming in, and how that our creative system and our intelligence within us can take that stored information and the new information and put it together and get additional information that really is applicable now. It's not artificial. We can activate that dormant stuff, dormant intelligence, into a renewed action. So that brings me to thinking about Dr. Glasser and an Edna role play. In the particular role play, it was a woman who was coming in and she was representing someone that had pain all over her body, but it would come and go. And she would go to doctor after doctor after doctor and run test after test after test, and they couldn't find anything wrong, nothing wrong. And so Dr. Glasser, when she came to him, he began to tell her that all of these symptoms was really looking at that it was hard to find because they weren't staying located. They were dancing around from here to there. And he equated her, and he made the comment to her because she was doubting that, well, I've been to so many people and had so many tests and so many this and so many that I'm just concerned about coming to see you, a psychiatrist that's going to talk about my head. And he told her, he says, what is hard for other doctors is easy for me. And what he did with this client was he told him, he said, your body, the nerves in your body are connecting and disconnecting in odd ways. And just like electricity is sent to a house, so those nerves run all through every part of your body. And when you go into one room and you turn it on, the light comes on. And when you leave that room, you turn it off. And there are different things that's showing up as saying, notice, notice, notice. But as we can kind of look at the whole electrical system, we can find an adequate remedy, an adequate solution to. And as I was listening to that and heard Dr. Glasser say that, I thought, yeah, that kind of works for me too. Because what other people say, that whenever we really listen to our own total behavior and our wisdom heart, it becomes easy for us to think through what is an adequate intelligence. Because my whole life's goal has been to help heal a hurting world. And the vehicle to help share it with others is choice theory. That everything we do really is our choice. But what about communicating with those that are not easy to communicate with? How do we handle those difficult communications? And to help me remember and keep on track what I was going to talk about, I put here, are you going to get something in quotes? Because this was back several years ago, many years ago, actually, when my husband and I in me in my vehicle and he in his vehicle, we pulled into a same store, not store, but filling station. And I get out to go in. I say, hey, what are you doing? And he said, are you here to get something? And he said, well, me too. I'm here to get something. But somehow when we both went into the establishment, it's like I thought his something that he was going to get matched my something I was going to get. And he thought, anyway, it turned out to be a difficult communication. But thankfully, I have learned how to communicate better, and so has he to a large degree. But those difficult communications still come up again and again and again. Matter of fact, I was working with someone just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, this is so difficult to communicate with this person. And then the thought came to my mind, it gives me an opportunity to challenge the theory. And the theory is that everything we do is really our choice. And so I thought to me, can I choose to be kind to this seeming nincompoop? You know? And then I began to challenge myself a little deeper. Can I choose not to label this valid human being as seeing them as a lesser being? Because if we understand it, if we're going to get something, but we haven't adequately defined our something, then we're not on the same page. And so, how do we use our genuine intelligence? Sometimes it's just internally within our own selves, we just go, ah. And it's to realize how dependent we have become on other things. Maybe some of the statements that we always make. We've become so dependent on that artificial intelligence. Well, just do this. Well, just do that. Well, just do something else. So for genuine intelligence is to ask for help so that we can have a different perspective. To question for insight, not to grill for information, but to be willing to ask for help so that we can get a different perception, or to be willing to give help in such a way that maybe the other person would be willing to look. And if they're not, then that's okay too. To listen for information. Whenever I've asked for help, then listen to what the person is saying. But also not only listening to that information, listen as much as I can for the intention, for the possible, and for the possible application. And to also give that information in the same manner. To give it in a way that is just giving information, not a directive. To give it so that they can read my intention as being something to think about, not an absolute. To give it as a possibility, not a definitive. And then listening, and then to trust. Well, where does that trust go? To trust the information giver, the person that's to trust yourself, to trust life's organic input, that even though at that moment we're not fully understanding each other, maybe and to trust our body, what our body is telling us, what that frustration signal is saying, what that peace is saying. Trust what our body is telling us. And again, I put a little note here for me to explain what I'm trying to say here. We had an LED light that was put in the main bathroom, where you just go into from the kitchen or the den or from wherever. And that LED light, there was two light fixtures in there that went in together. And the LED light, my husband replaced it with a new one. And it was brighter and it worked okay, but it took a few minutes. You turn the electricity light on, and one light would light up immediately, and the LED light would take a few minutes for it to say, here I am, I decided to join the party. And so my husband told me, he said, I changed out the LED light with the one that was in the closet. Took the closet light, put it where the LED light was, put the LED light that was coming in 2 seconds behind where the LED light was in the closet. Well, I did not get the picture until later. And that's what I mean by giving life its organic input. That later we can, oh, I think I'm seeing where it was whenever I went in and opened the closet door and flipped the light, and it took a couple of seconds for its light to shine bright. They thought, oh, that's what Garland meant when he said, I switched out the lights. And that's what I'm meaning by allowing our trust to hear some organic input, maybe even after the session, or maybe even after we've decided to, let's talk about this a little later. And then realizing, asking for help, listening for information, trusting. And what is that? The fifth one? The fifth thing in genuine intelligence is to decide, to make a choice. Am I going to change things and I'm going to accept it as it is, or am I going to move on? And that move on doesn't necessarily mean leaving. That moving on leads, you know what, I'm just going to overlook that pettiness. I'm just going to overlook until there can, and then to practice. And in that practice, to continually evaluate. A practice, who I want to be, what I want to be doing, what my wisdom heart is really speaking to me. So, in looking at self-evaluating and having authentic, genuine intelligence, I thought I would share some excerpts from Dr. Glasser's book, Every Student Can Succeed. And the book was written primarily for helping students in a school situation. But you know what? I see life as a school, and I am a student of life, and I encourage you to be also. So here are some of the choices, some of the questions that Dr. Glasser asked. Choice theory, or some of the quotes, some of the excerpts from the book. And I'm just simply asking you to think about it. Choice theory teaches that we choose all we do, and we are responsible for the choices we make. This means we choose both our happiness and our misery. To evaluate something new is to actually practice. If it works, its value will be obvious. And of course, if it doesn't work, its value will still be obvious. Choice theory teaches, oh, well, there's a double do. It teaches that all we do and we are responsible for what we do. Well, there it goes again. So here's another one. Asking Tom instead of telling Tom infers that you respect him. Instead of telling, hey, you're a little off key here, you're a little off this there. As a, you know, can you ask a question, not to grill, but to help the person self-evaluate. So here's a few more, and hopefully these aren't. The more unhappy you are, the more you will try to do something to feel better. But it is still unlikely that you will try to make major changes in your own behavior. When there's something that we don't like, we want somebody else or something else to change. But the only person we can change and the only person we have any control over is moi. So we need to make major changes in our own behavior, which includes thoughts, actions, and emotions. If you depend on the fairness of others for your happiness, your life will be filled with disappointment. Difficult as it may be, there is a real plus in depending on yourself, because when you do, you have a lot more control over what happens to you. You are responsible. Don't blame the people you are trying to reach. Think of Tom as a good piece of furniture, well worth making the effort to restore. It's a lot of work, but if you are willing to do the work, it will pay off. And that not only is thinking of Tom as a good piece of furniture, but think of yourself as a good piece of furniture. well worth making the effort to restore, to repair the nervous system throughout the whole entire house so the whole body can shine. It's a lot of work, but if you're willing to do the work, it will pay off. So, as we come to a conclusion here, I want to talk about Dr. Glasser and Dr. Sue. Dr. Glasser is the founder of reality therapy and choice theory. And Dr. Glasser says we don't learn from making mistakes. We learn from correcting them or self-evaluating them. Dr. Sue Morter is the doctor and scientist and author of the Energy Codes. And Dr. Sue focuses on awareness, and she's primarily in the yoga and that type of thing. But I couple them together because also it's going along with Dr. Glasser's total behavior. And as we put ourselves in a position to be aware and listen to and involve our total behavior of thinking, acting, and emotions that leads to health and wellness. And so Dr. Sue, which is what people that have become more acclimated with her refer to her as, just Dr. Sue. And in one of her instructions, one of her directives, she's asked that you get in an awareness position, whatever that would be to you. And then to tell yourself, I forgive any interference from, and I'm going to give you the 6 things that she has that we need to check out and see how it's interfering in our life. And in parentheses there, I put the word release, because maybe forgiveness may be a little bit too wide of a giant step, but to begin to release any interference could be a little simpler in a baby step. I forgive any interference from fear. And to think about releasing fear, giving it a name so that you can know what that fear is, giving it a title so that, or, a dimension of. I release any interference from anger. And think to yourself how to do that, how to calm yourself down. I release any interference from love. Whoa. Maybe am I not seeing clearly because I had my blinders on? I forgive or I release interference from sadness. I release any interference from enjoyment. I release any interference from judgment. Because as we look at these positive, negative, and listen to our body, because it will give us some kind of a message, some kind of an inclination, some kind of a oh yes or an oh no. And so that's bringing us to the end of our little discussion today. I thank you for being here. And are you willing to begin to think you can do it? Well, I think you can. So thanks for being here, and good mental health.